So what do you do when that happens to you? Um, so there's quite a bit of yardage on this, and I always love their names. This one's called Suns Out, Pens Out. Um, and the yardage is 230 yards. So I have almost 700 yards without this skein. And so I will swatch with this skein, and I think I might use it for my trim. And I'm actually doing a little half-size design for my knitting camp that feels like it would be lovely in that yarn. Um, so that's what I might do. And today in Knit Camp, we talked about, when I say we, I mean me, I talk. And I talked about taking upper body measurements and showed them how I use my half-size dress form and how I take measurements from her and extrapolate them then into a full size. And then she's not precisely a size 10. So I have to do a little fiddling after that. But the main thing is I wanted to show how you don't need a lot of ease in the upper body. And in some cases, like these width measurements, you really don't need any ease at all. You just need to choose where you want it to end. And so frequently when I'm doing things in Excel, where all numbers are figured, I have to put in negative ease because I'm starting from, hey, Iris, from the standard width of the shoulder. And so then to bring it into where you want the shoulder seam to be, or in this case, it's a tank top, you have to actually deduct from that. So that happens, but that's usually happening in the background. And unless you're a designer, you don't need to do that. So I did another Crafternoon for my campers. And so I was just experimenting. And this is not fantastic, but I love this bullion. It's just big and squishy. I love bullions. Here I did some, that was using 2 strands, and here I did these at the bottom of that chain pattern. And those were not only just done with 1 strand of yarn, but I was very careful and precise, which I'm usually not. And then I'll start at the beginning here, and somehow I've gotten the 2 layers sewn together, I believe. I see my waist, yeah. Just cut that apart. So here, this was a sample for a cuff that's doubled, and you can see that I didn't do a very nice job on the join. And so I thought, well, let's explore a way to create something interesting that would cover that up. And I didn't have this particular yarn close by, so I used a contrast. And I love it up here where I did it really tightly. This was the herringbone stitch. And then I spread it out here, and it's fine, but I don't really like it. I really loved it up there. And so then I went to the other side, and I have to cut off, well, before, I'll let you see before I cut. So, I put that gray over thinking it might look good, but it didn't, so I'm just gonna cut it off, and, um, this is the reason why you play around with these things, and I didn't really anchor the yarn, so I can just pull it out. Okay, so I did this running stitch, and I did this bottom row first, and it was fine, but not much, but then when I put in the second row, it looked really cool, and I really like it. Um, and then I did like a spaced out chain stitch, and again, I was using doubled yarn, and so it really looks like I wrapped the yarn there, and I think that looks pretty good, and again, it looked better when I added the second row, um, and I would really wanna go in and steam this to make them a little more uniform, and then I did French knots, um, which I thought were quite cute, and again, I tried to be really precise, but I only got one really good one, um, and then I was trying to figure out cross stitch, which I didn't really succeed in doing. I was thinking that you could do it over this grid that's kind of created by seed stitch, um, but I couldn't really remember how to cross stitch, so it's a bit of a mess. Um, but I think you could do it. You would just need to be have your technique a little bit more in order than I did. And all of the yarns that I used um, are from Oink Pigments, who I also bought the yellow yarn from. They gave me, years ago, they gave me like a sampler box of all of their bases and different ways that they dye things, and I love it. So I just dipped into that and used that. I know I had things I was going to talk about today, but it's been a long week. And oh, I know what I was going. I didn't make a list, um, so I had really a fun time. I'm writing a pattern for a compilation with a couple of other designers, and um, we're so far behind on it that it's unbelievable. But that's partly my fault and beside the point. But so I've been explaining in the pattern, like, this is an any size, any gauge item. It's just a accessory for your head. And so I've been explaining like how to figure out your cast on and how to figure out how many shaping stitches you need. And I got to the point of explaining how to do the increases, because the bottom part goes out, and I don't know what your gauge is. So, I was laboriously writing the instructions, and I just went, "Oh, screw it. This would be so much faster if I just made a calculator in the Pattern Tailor." And so I did, and it's taken me probably like maybe 2 hours to put together the whole calculator. And, I always find things that have to be changed after I've put the whole thing together. Um, but it was exciting for me in that A, I could crank something out so fast, and B, that, um, yeah, like nobody needs all that instruction if you're just a knitter. You just want to be able to get your numbers and write them in. Um, so then I was like, okay, so this is so cool. Why don't I do it to the whole pattern? But that's not the deal with this compilation. So I think just having this one thing that is in the Pattern Tailor. This is more about buying single patterns, or it's actually an ebook compilation. So I guess C, I was glad I was able to restrain myself from diving in and creating something that didn't need to be created. And I will eventually make the pattern available in the Pattern Tailor, but not for the printed version. And so that was really fun and has given me something to hang on to in this week of freaking chaos. I think the chaos in the world is starting to bug me, and I just can't rise above it enough. And Mitch has got some health issues, which are not good. It's not making me feel happy, and I'm not sleeping well. So there you go. I have, oh, and then we have to go to a funeral tomorrow, or a celebration of life. And I can't find the invitation. And so I texted the person who's putting it on, the decedent's sister, and to find out what time it was, because neither one of us could remember. Mitch had put it on the calendar for 12, but he thought it was at 2, and it indeed is at 2. And he had put on time to commute. It's down in Olympia, which is 60 miles away. So one of the things that starts happening to you is people you know die. And John was, I think he was 77, so he was older than me. He was actually the older brother of a friend of mine who was also older than me, but we lived in the same neighborhood until they moved. Their dad got transferred to Illinois, or took a job, I think, and it was in Illinois. And so Jane and I played together, and she wasn't allowed to come to our house unless we were playing outside, because she had such bad allergies to our cat. And she, of course, wanted nothing more than to spend time with the cat. So she was always going home with itchy eyes and whatever. I think her eyes kind of swelled shut. But I think they moved, probably I was like 7, maybe, or 8. And, we kind of keep in touch through Christmas cards. But John actually lived down the street from us. He started out as a scientist, a researcher. I don't know what he did, but his last employment, which he was still employed as far as I know, was with a German pharmaceutical company, and they had a drug for diabetics that was quite successful. And so he was part of the sales team, but was more delivering education on the efficacy and how to use the drug, and to health providers, I think. So he found a good career. He had to kind of step away from research because he just couldn't keep up with the grants and the ups and downs in the federal economy, So whenever the economy would start sucking, he would lose access to grants. And so he eventually left that probably when he was in his 40s, maybe 50s. But he was always kind of a night owl and very serious. So, although he had a wonderful sense of humor. So we didn't like hang out a lot, but he did just live 3 blocks away. And interestingly, died from, I don't want to say from osteoporosis. His bones got so thin because he'd taken a lot of steroids for asthma. And so his bones got so thin that they were breaking, like he broke his back when he sneezed. And eventually everything just kind of, he had back surgery that was not successful, and that was his banana peel. But it has made me think about my older brother and younger sister, who both died within the last 3 years. And this is fucking depressing. I'm sorry. And how life changes and things happen that you don't expect or you don't think are ever going to happen. So anyhow, tomorrow, this will lift the whole thing a little bit. So, my father died in 1980. Just keeping death in the conversation here. And my mother remarried one of his best friends. He was an extrovert, so he had many. And his wife had died previous to my father dying. So they got married and were married until Dick died. And let's say they got married in 1982, and he probably died in 1997 or 98. Oh, before that, maybe 1995. Anyhow, same thing happened with John and Jane's mother. Her husband died, and she was alone for a long time, and she had moved back to Olympia. And another friend of my parents, who had also been very good friends of Jane and John's parents, his wife died. And so and they were both golfers, so they ended up getting married, which was really lovely. And they had a lovely life together before Herb died. And the women, of course, lived long after both their husbands. Where was I going with this? So anyhow, I think it's not. Oh, so at this service, I expect to see Herb's kids, who were older than me and older than my brother, who is 6 years older than me. So I'm thinking Patrick was probably 8 years older than me, and probably Kathy was 10 years older than me. And then Billy, the youngest, was probably 4 or 5 years older than me. So we'll see what they're like. They, I'm sure have great grandchildren at this point, or at least grandchildren. And who, I don't know who else will, rise from the ashes of my childhood, that I might see there. And it's raining right now, so don't have to worry about wearing a summer dress tomorrow. I can wear black pants, I guess. I don't think at a celebration of life you have to dress in black. I just have to decide what top I want to wear. And then I will choose my pants. And because this freaking body shop has our car, I just keep saying, I'm not sure they may have sold the car. They just don't want to tell us. We had to rent a car to go down to Olympia. And because it's a holiday, the weekend before 4th of July, that was expensive. And I think I've already complained about how expensive Uber has been. So mostly I've just been sticking in the neighborhood. Mitch and I went to a concert on Sunday, and our friends picked us up. And was at a jazz club, and it was Bill Frisell. I think I ended last week talking about how many times I've seen Bill Frisell in cities, and I realized I'd forgotten LA, that we saw him down in LA with Julian Lage, who's also a jazz guitarist that we love. And this was, I think, pre-COVID. And Mitch had a colleague who lived down in Los Angeles. And so we got tickets and took them to the concert. They'd never heard of Bill Frisell. He's on like a million albums. So, a lifetime of discovery after that. But it was really fun to share both his music and Julian's music. With them. And, Mitch has since retired. And I think Andrea and her husband moved to Ohio because they needed childcare help. And her parents were available. And everything is cheaper in Ohio. So I've seen him there. The concert was just great. And I love this. He's very introverted and doesn't talk a lot, but usually, says, at least introduces the band members. And I don't think he even did that this time. They came out, it's at a club, so they play 90 minutes. That's it. And because it was Sunday, they didn't have another set to do. So they played their 90 minutes straight through. There were no breaks. There was no conversation. They just kept segueing into the next piece. And it was fabulous. And then they left the stage and got a standing ovation, came back out. And before they went back to play their encore, Bill stopped at the microphone and said, so it was after a concert outside of Philadelphia, or a show. And this guy comes up to me afterwards and he's like, dude, that was the longest song I've ever heard. So apparently he missed all the segueing, but, and he didn't say anything else. He just went back and started playing. So I really appreciate that. He is just leaning into who he is. And then we went to see Artemis, which is a 5-piece female jazz group. So there's a drummer, a bass player, I think an alto sax, and a trumpet player and a pianist. And I think they played exactly the same concert we heard in New York, but doesn't matter. It was really good. But what I really loved, really, really loved, after kind of my snit earlier in the week about why can't we just be allowed to be who we are? They were all standing in their space and being who they are. Um, and it's fun to see women do that and how they hold that space. So one of the gals was the trumpeter. Um, Mitch always says she just seems pissed off. I don't think she's pissed off. I think she just doesn't want to do any of the bullshit anymore. And she is a huge champion of her fellow musicians, and she makes sure that you clap for them, or if she loves something they do, she hoots. She was always making sure that the pianist, who's the leads the group, I guess is the word, was always also being recognized, because they introduce everybody else, but don't always introduce themselves. Um, and I think it felt perhaps to an older man a little aggressive, but I thought it was great. And you could tell that they 5 women had very different personalities. And I would say I'd say the youngest was probably in her 30s, maybe early 30s, and the oldest was probably in her 60s. And they're probably at all different levels of their reproductive cycle and, from just being in normal female existence to probably different stages of perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause. And I suspect the trumpeter was postmenopause, um, and just didn't give a shit anymore. So, but I love going to see music. Mitch always laughs at me because I will literally go to almost anything. I don't like symphony and I don't like opera, but within what I don't really do. I mean, I am too old for rap, and if given a choice, I would not go to bluegrass. But um, so Mitch is always teasing me because I will go to anything. He'll say, "Do you want to go see such and such?" I have no idea who they are, and I'm always like, "Yeah, sure." Um, but if it's music, I find it so kind of soothing, and if I don't like it, I just close my eyes and kind of let the music wash over me and think big thoughts, work out problems on things I'm working on. Um, and then there's always the people watching. So the people watching was pretty good at Artemis. I didn't notice the people very much at Bill Frisell because we were there with another couple. So we talked until the music started, and also the way I was seated, I had to turn sideways to see the stage. And then I'm always interested in how people behave on stage, and how they occupy that space. So music is my happy place, and I'm a little bummed about losing an entire day tomorrow, but that's life, I guess. And I think it's supposed to get really nice again towards the end of the weekend. So probably a bummer for the celebration of life planners that it doesn't look like the weather is going to be as good as they said. And I have already chosen the project I'm going to cast on in the car. I have all my notes so that I can do it. I've actually written the pattern already. I've just made a couple of little changes for this version. And I guess what I have to think about tonight is I think I only have one skein of the red. So do I wind this into a ball? I think I'll just go with what I've already got. I don't need to tangle any yarn this week. And I think I'm going to go because I really want to play with my calculator before the music hour. And so I only have like 10 minutes to do that. So have a wonderful weekend. Is Friday the 4th? I think it probably is. So I think I may pass next week. But have a wonderful holiday. We will celebrate, as we always do, with hot dogs. And the weather will probably be crap here because it always is on summer holidays. So see you next week. I hope you aren't in a heat dome. And actually, I won't see you next week. I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.